This exchange inside Congress gets tense fast. A lawmaker accuses the FBI director of making America less safe, saying political violence is rising and critical protections were cut. But the response she gets back is explosive. The FBI director fires back, saying crime is down, arrests are up, and that his agents are being unfairly attacked for political reasons. So who's telling the truth? Is the FBI failing the public, or is this another political fight over how law enforcement should operate in America?
The past few months, the country has experienced a string of horrific, high-profile attacks that have been motivated by racial hatred or political ideology. Shooter attacked the CDC headquarters, firing hundreds of rounds and killing a police officer. An arsonist set fire to the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro's residence, with the governor and his family actually inside. Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated earlier this year. Clark and Charlie Kirk was murdered last week. Bomb threats have been made against HBCUs and the DNC, and just the list goes on and on. I only have just a few minutes today, so I don't want to take a lot of time to go into all the countless and devastating violent crimes and incidents that have happened at our schools or on our streets and in our communities that have just been happening all year long. Mr. Patel, just yes or no, is this type of political violence ever acceptable in your eyes?
No.
I'm glad that we agree that these heinous acts designed to instill fear and division in our nation are never, ever acceptable. Yet each of these incidents has recently taken place under your watch. The FBI's website states that protecting the United States from terrorist acts is the FBI's #1 priority, including from domestic terrorists. Is this still your #1 priority?
This is where the exchange starts to shift. What began as a policy question quickly turns into a direct challenge about leadership, responsibility, and public safety. And the response that follows changes the tone of the entire hearing.
Domestic terrorism?
Preventing domestic terrorism.
Our #1 priorities are protecting the homeland and international terrorism and crushing violent crime, and domestic terrorism sort of interlays between both of those.
Okay, so well, then I'm glad that you're giving us the right answer, but unfortunately, your actions kind of tell a different story. Earlier this year, you granted the ranks of the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Operations Section. This is the section of the FBI that is most directly responsible for addressing political violence in our country by preventing attacks from occurring and effectively responding to them if they do. The agents in this section are the ones who stopped an individual stockpiling weapons, who planned to attack schools and churches in Florida and seized bombs made by an ISIS sympathizer in New Orleans. And instead of ensuring that this section has all the resources that it needs at a time when its mission is critical, you fired its decorated veteran FBI agents who have served their country proudly under Republican and both Democratic presidents, and you scrapped the tools that they developed to fight domestic terrorism, including the National Domestic Terrorism Incident Database.
I mean, most of that is just not true. We have 1,700 current DT managed programs. We're up 300% in the amount of cases we brought against nihilistic, violent extremists, including 764, wishing to harm our children. The FBI and the men and women are getting after that problem set more than ever because I've unleashed them to do so. And any insinuation that these tragic occurrences across the country are somehow singularly my fault or disgusting because that watershed goes down to the men and women at the FBI, and they are not responsible for it. I'm happy to work with you to get them what they need.
Gentlelady controls the time. Unanimous consent required.
What makes this exchange so important isn't just the disagreement. It's what it reveals about how Americans view safety, accountability, and leadership at the highest levels of law enforcement. Representative Lucy McBath frames her concerns around a growing fear many Americans share that political violence, extremism, and targeted attacks are becoming more common. She points to real incidents, real victims, and real fear, and argues that the FBI's priorities under Director Kash Patel have shifted away from preventing these threats. Her concern centers on resources. According to her, agents who once focused on domestic extremism and child exploitation were reassigned. She argues that tools used to track domestic terrorism were scaled back. In her view, these decisions weakened the FBI's ability to protect communities. That accusation is serious, and it goes directly to the heart of public trust. But Patel strongly rejects that framing. He responds by pointing to numbers and outcomes. He says arrests of violent criminals have increased dramatically. He claims the FBI has taken down more child predators, seized more drugs, dismantled more trafficking networks, and captured high-profile fugitives at higher rates than in previous years. From his perspective, the FBI is not failing. It's performing at historic levels. This clash reveals something deeper than a policy disagreement. It shows how differently success can be defined depending on perspective. One side focuses on structure, priorities, and internal decisions. The other focuses on results, statistics, and enforcement outcomes. And in between sits the American public, trying to understand whether the system designed to protect them is truly working. What makes this moment especially tense is the emotional weight behind it. When issues like domestic terrorism, child safety, and political violence are discussed, the stakes are incredibly high. Any suggestion that safety has been compromised draws strong reactions from lawmakers and from the public. At the same time, hearings like this also reveal how politicized oversight can become. Members of Congress are not only seeking answers, they are also speaking to voters, shaping narratives, and signaling values. That doesn't mean their concerns are invalid, but it does mean these exchanges often serve more than one purpose. Patel's response reflects that reality. He doesn't just defend his policies, he defends the agents themselves. He frames criticism as an attack on people doing dangerous work every day. That framing resonates with audiences who believe law enforcement is unfairly blamed for broader social problems. On the other hand, McBath's line of questioning reflects concerns shared by many Americans who want accountability, transparency, and assurance that violent threats are being taken seriously. This tension between oversight and defense, criticism and loyalty, is a recurring theme in U.S. politics. What this hearing ultimately highlights is how difficult it is to measure success in public safety. Arrest numbers alone don't tell the full story. Neither do policy intentions without outcomes. Real accountability requires transparency, clear metrics, and honest debate. It also shows how quickly discussions about public safety can turn political. Instead of focusing only on facts, hearings often become moments where broader narratives collide: trust versus skepticism, enforcement versus reform, leadership versus oversight. For viewers, the takeaway isn't about choosing sides. It's about understanding how these debates shape the institutions meant to protect the country. Because behind every statistic are real people. Behind every policy choice are real consequences. And behind every hearing like this is a larger question about how America balances security, accountability, and trust. That's why exchanges like this matter. Not because of the raised voices, but because they reveal how power is questioned, defended, and justified in public. And ultimately, that process, messy, tense, and imperfect, is part of how democracy works.